All right, all my Food for Life family. We have a very special guest today. We have Zuliya Khawaja, and she is probably one of my favorite top chef competitors. And she is a vegan chef that makes the most stunning creations you will ever see. And I want you guys to check out her stuff. I will have her socials across the bottom for you guys to look at. But Zuliya, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. I've been like a little kid. I'm like, I love her stuff. I'm so excited to have her. I'm like, it's such a great time to have her. Usually the first question I ask all my guests is to tell them a little bit about yourself, tell the audience who you are and what you do a little bit.
So, I am a self-taught chef who specializes in elevated plant-based cuisine. I'm also a food stylist, recipe developer for major brands. Outside of my culinary expertise, I'm also a fitness instructor and I teach at my local gym. I teach dance classes, in
Oh,
fact.
wow.
I'm also a plant-based coach. I help people who are transitioning from the omnivore diet into a plant-based diet and help them with planning their meals, nutrition, shopping habits, all of that.
That sounds like a good time. I do some of that myself with my clients. What kind of fitness dance classes do you teach? I'm so interested in that.
So, 10 years ago, when I switched into a plant based diet, I wanted to change my entire lifestyle. And I said to myself, I need to find a workout that I could stick to, you
Mhm.
know? And you know how we are. Like sometimes we start a workout and they're like, yeah, it gets boring. I
Mhm.
was always into dancing. And I started teaching Zumba classes at my local gym, and it's been 10 years. I love it. It's like my therapy. I teach every day except Sundays. 1 hour. I go and I lose myself in music. I absolutely love it.
I love to hear that. I find that working out is, I do it, yes, my body feels good after I do it, but I do it more for my mental health and stress release. And I think more people should do it for that, for the love of it, the movement.
And that's what it was for me. I found uh, this element in working out where it was like meditation for me. I would lose myself in it. And it was great for my mental health at the point of transition. And I was transitioning into a plant based diet.
What else do you like to do for fun?
I like hiking, swimming. What else? Oh my gosh, so many things. Hanging out with my friends, I feel like in our jobs, we're almost always in front of the computer, always, always in the kitchen. I'm always in the kitchen. And like when I have an opportunity to get together with my friends and do something fun, spend some quality time, that's always a plus.
So you're originally from Uzbekistan. Did I say that right? Okay.
Central Asia, it was part of former Soviet Union for 75 years before we became independent in 1992.
What was it like growing up there and what was it like the food and the culture around all that?
The food in Uzbekistan is very meat centric. So you can imagine I grew up eating a lot of meat. And people always ask me now, like, how did you transition from this really meat heavy lifestyle into a plant-based lifestyle? But growing up in Uzbekistan, my grandmother used to cook a lot of vegetables, and I always
Mhm.
preferred eating more vegetables than animal protein. I was never a big fan of meat even growing up. I think the trigger for me was in my culture during big holidays they cook um, lamb and this on open fire. When I
Mhm.
saw where my lamb came from, I decided that was
Oh,
not that was not what I wanted to eat my life, my whole life. I'm like, no. So like I started weaning off animal protein when I was, I think, 14. I was still eating a lot of vegetables and fish and here and there, I would have some chicken, but I never really enjoyed eating meat growing up.
Oh, I
But
see you have a visitor in the background.
oh, hi, baby.
Talking about animals, and we have a little head pop in.
Hi, baby. Um, so yeah, it was growing up. I was very much influenced by my grandmothers, my aunties who loved cooking in the kitchen. Cooking was this special moment for all of us, a gathering of people cooking together, singing together while we're cooking. It was always that aspect, the cultural aspect of cooking for me, always like I associate it with love, lots of love, like
Mhm.
showing love to each other. While we're cooking, my grandmother would tell us stories from her childhood. And in the process, I would get to know my grandmother even more. So.
So you've always felt like I'm Italian. So Italians like you, food is around everything. And it was always a time of love and fun and jovial times. I always tell people cooking for someone is like an act of love.
So true.
So
So true.
I love to hear that you learned so much about your grandmother and things like that. So, what were some of your favorite parts about food in your upbringing? And like, did your grandmother have something? Is there something she made or makes, if she's still alive, that you can never get right?
Oh my God. So my grandmother passed away a few years ago, but growing up, her and I, we used to love cooking dumplings together. I think I
Mm.
posted one of the recipes that she taught me to make recently on my page. We would make dumplings, we would make noodles together, and one of her favorite dishes was this Uzbek rice that she would make called plov or pilav, and it's traditionally made with lamb. And she would make this every Sunday when I would come over to her house. And interestingly, like every time she would serve it for me, she would take the meat part and then she would serve it with more vegetables than
Aw.
meat itself. I still can't get the rice right the way how my grandmother used to make. I make it really really well. I make the vegan version of it, but still something that my grandmother used to make with that rice dish. I still don't know how she did it. It was probably her secret. You know how our grandmothers,
Yeah.
literally in our culture, they all have this little touch that they do, and no matter how much you watch them cook and create the recipe, right? Still, like it's not gonna taste the same. Maybe it's in the water. My auntie used to say, like maybe the water is different, right? Where you from? Maybe it's the spices that we're using here in this
Mhm.
country, different from the spices we use in Uzbekistan or like in your situation in Italy, right?
Mhm.
But I always try making her rice and it comes out great, but still doesn't taste the same way as hers.
Yeah, my great grandmother was like that. She would make stuff like we would have to go and watch her because she'd say, "Oh, a little of this. Oh, you just put a handful of this," or she would say that she would say half in English and half in Italian. So you didn't really pay attention to what she was saying because like trying to get the measurements from her, like you would literally have to sit there and watch her because she didn't measure anything. Like it's all in
Oh
her
my
brain
goodness,
somewhere. Even
exactly.
when
Just a
she
little bit of
baked.
this, a little bit of that.
It was the craziest thing to watch. I loved it. Now, you came to the US when you were in your 20s,
I
if I
was
read your bio right.
yeah, I came here in my 20s. It was in 1997.
Okay.
Mhm. We came to this country as political refugees. My dad used to work for the
Oh, wow.
government in Uzbekistan, and things just kind of politically went south for him. Let's put it that way. He was running for a public office, and the
Mhm.
government really liked the fact that he was a very popular candidate. Um, so his political ambitions created a lot of issues for us there. At the point where his life was in danger, where our lives were in danger. So we basically had to leave everything behind and run. And that's how we came to the United States. We got political asylum.
That must have been very difficult for your family.
It was leaving everything behind. our homes, things we loved, our friends. It was a big transition, really, really big transition.
How did you, I mean, I can't imagine what that feels like, but once you were here, like, how did you, I mean, you're in your 20s, so you're an adult, so it's not like you're like a young kid that adapts as easily as when you're a fully formed adult, you're kind of set in your ways by, I mean, you're still learning in your 20s, but you've set in your ways to some extent. So what was that like for you? Like, did you take your love of food with you here, or was it just a big transition?
it was a big transition. It was a cultural shock coming from Central Asia, to this incredible country. I never used to drive growing up because, like, we had drivers who would take us to school, who would take us to places. Cooking was just for fun, like cooking with my grandmother, cooking with my aunties. We had people who used to cook for us as well. So, like, everything was a huge transition when I came to this country. Um, Being able to learn how to pay my own bills, being able to, like, learning how to basic things, like a lot of people don't understand this. Like, I had to learn basic things in my 20s after moving to the United States. Like, oh, you have to write a check, oh, you have to pay bills, oh, you have to do this. So it was quite interesting. It was a growing up experience, let's put it that way.
Well, on the plus side, your 20s are for growing up to some extent, and it is for learning. I mean, I gotta imagine where did you end up living when you came to the US at first?
We immigrated to East Coast, so we lived in New Jersey.
Okay. So
New Jersey.
learning to drive in New Jersey must have been like a real shock.
It was a big shock. First of all, driving in the snow was another story. Like, I would refuse driving in the snow. I used to be horrified driving in bad weather. Um,
Oh God, we just got a foot of snow this weekend.
I overheard you saying that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I live on the East Coast, so yeah, we just got a foot of snow over the weekend. So yeah, we get quite used to driving in the snow, but if you've never done it, it's a terrifying experience.
It was so terrifying. I remember my first experience and I refused after that. I'm like, okay, I'm not driving in the snow. But then I ended up moving to California. So now, like, I don't miss the snow at all, which
No,
is
you
great.
just have all kinds of natural weather disasters to work.
Exactly. We have earthquakes, we have fires, hurricanes.
Oh no, that's much better than the snow. So you've always loved to cook and it was something you did for fun, but like you had a normal job, right? You lived in the
I did.
corporate.
I had a normal job. So I have a degree in economics. So I worked as a broker analyst for a investment firm for
Oh,
many,
wow.
many years before switching careers. In my late 30s, early 40s, I realized that the money wasn't bringing me joy anymore. The stress of working in a hedge fund world and investment banking and real estate development. It was all of that was just causing health issues, a lot of mental breakdowns because I was getting very little amount of sleep, um, not being able to spend enough time with my kids at that time because my travel schedule used to be really nuts. Um, Something triggered. I remember, so I started experiencing a lot of inflammation in my body. Like, my joints were hurting one morning. I woke up, like, and I'm like, why is this happening to me? Why am I experiencing so much pain in my body? I started listening to my body, doing a lot of research. What I realized that it was my lifestyle, the high stress lifestyle, not eating clean, consuming, a lot of dairy was causing also
Right.
um, inflammation in my body. At that time, after doing a lot of research, I realized that I had to do something. I had to switch my lifestyle. I had to switch my diet, and that's how I transitioned into a plant-based diet. And after 6 months, I started noticing so much difference in my body, not experiencing migraine headaches anymore, being able to wake up without feeling lethargic anymore in the morning. Um, all of that uh, led me to believe that it's not just what I'm putting in my body, but also what I'm surrounding myself with. And if I was having a high stress job, that's still gonna cause a lot of issues in my life. So pretty much overnight, I quit my job. I
Yeah.
went to my boss and I'm like, okay, I think I'm not gonna come to work tomorrow. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to do this anymore. He's like, well, what do you mean you don't want to do this anymore? Like, I had a very important position. I was a director of investor relations for a big
Yeah.
investment and was completely shocked. My whole family thought I was going through a phase. That phase is going to go away and I'm going to go back to work, but it didn't. I started cooking. I started sharing my recipes. People were wondering what I was doing. They like, what are you doing? What are you eating? Like, you look amazing. Every time I would see my friends, they would be like, oh my gosh, you look younger. You look happier. What are you doing? I'm like, I changed my lifestyle. I quit my job. I'm eating plant-based. They're like, wow, you got to share your recipes. So that was my like that was basically the catalyst to me. Like, okay, I'm going to start changing everything. I'm going to start sharing my recipes on Instagram. Instagram was just new at that
Yeah.
time. And that was the basically beginning of NaturallyZuzu. I wanted to share my recipes with my friends and family, but little I knew at that time that there were so many people who were on a similar journey that I was. And the hashtags helped to find my recipes. Those people were able to find my recipes through hashtags like plant-based recipes. Like, remember, like when Instagram was out there, we started doing those hashtags. People would find us through
I
hashtags.
mean, we still use them, but I don't use, like, I wasn't big into Instagram when I first started. I didn't really have any reason to be. But when I did start using it, I noticed food was a big thing, which is what I do as well. But your recipes I find beautiful. Not only are they visually stunning, which we eat with our eyes first, which people seem to forget,
Yeah.
but they're visually stunning and plant-based lifestyle. Like, I mean, people think, oh, plants, vegan, ew, it's gonna taste bad, but I see the beauty in all of that. Not only the visual part of it, like even if you don't like plant-based stuff, you should at least see the beauty in the stuff you create.
It was actually proven that when your food looks better on the plate, the absorption in your body of the nutrients is better as well. So when you're looking at the food and the food looks good, your mind immediately tells you, your brain immediately tells your gut, this is going to be delicious. This is going to be so good. This is nutrient rich. And you automatically absorb, I guess, those nutrients so much better. So it was proven. So many
That's something
studies.
I actually didn't know. That's why visual did it. I find that, you know, how you're talking about the inflammation in your body and everything like that. Like, I mean, that's a big difference. You finally stopped and listened to your body. Did your like boss think you were going through burnout, or did your family, were they supportive, or did they think you were having like some sort of,
Midlife crisis.
yeah, like some sort of crisis? Like, did they think like they needed to like have the equivalent of a man buying a sports car and trading it
Yes,
kind of thing?
exactly. That's exactly what my father, I remember, said to me. Oh, hi, baby.
He
We
wants
have
to get in on the action.
yes, we have a guest. All right. I remember my father saying, like, what's happening? Like, do you want to go on a month-long trip? Maybe get it out of your system, whatever you're going through. Like, why you're doing this? But no, it wasn't. I was very dedicated. I'm one of those people, I have an obsessive personality. When I become obsessed with something, like I put 100%. And when I decided to change my lifestyle, I became very obsessive with this lifestyle. I would read, I would educate myself. I went to eCornell to get my certification on plant-based nutrition because I really wanted to educate people who I talked to who were against my lifestyle change, that this is all science-backed
Mhm.
facts. People can actually heal themselves through a plant-based diet. And I'm a walking proof. I'm 46, turning 47 soon, and I look better than ever. I look better than I look in my early 30s. I feel better because of the lifestyle change. Um, you know, I remember when I transitioned into a plant-based diet, people would make fun of me saying, oh, what are you going to eat? Vegan food? Like, it tastes like cardboard, Vegan food is tasteless. So my goal when I started NaturallyZuzu was to make my food to look so sexy. So even a non-vegan would be like, damn, I want to eat this, And that's how it's all like my whole idea started. Like, okay, I'm gonna make the vegan food look beautiful, visually beautiful as well. So people would look at it and they want to eat it, right? So that's how I wanted to present every time I would cook. People would come to my house, and it wouldn't be just a plate with food. It would be an art. I always look at my plate as a canvas. Um, how can I make? How can I express myself through my food? Put my food on a plate in a way as like I'm expressing something. It's a storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
With food, I wanted to tell a story. Let's say if I'm cooking sweet potato, like how can I express the sweet potato as a story, right? Where is it? So I would talk about the farmer who grew that sweet potato, or a farmer's market. When I was walking in a farmer's market and I met this farmer, and he told me his life of how he became a farmer and how he grows these potatoes, all that, like I would imagine. And then when I put my food together on a plate, I would think of that farmer
Oh, wow.
with that potato or those green peas. And I would create something around that story on my plate. And when we sat down on the table, and the people would say, like, wow, this reminds me of this garden or this and that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a garden that was inspired by the farmer who told me his story of the garden. So that was basically my inspiration. People who were around me, whether they were farmers or chefs who I met in the past, they all inspired this journey that I'm in right now. And I feel like it happens continuously, daily. I always get inspired by something or by someone, like talking to you right now, hearing your story. I might be walking my dog and I would see something on my path, and that would inspire me to create my next dish. Or I would be listening on the radio to someone, and that would inspire my next dish. So that's where my inspirations come from. People always ask me, like, where do you get your inspirations? Like, I don't know.
It's neat
Always
that you can
comes
take inspiration from almost anything, right?
anything. Absolutely. And that's how I say I take my inspirations pretty much from anything. I love supporting other chefs in my community. So when I go out and eat their food, I get inspired. It's always like always, we're surrounded by inspirations, right? Everything in the nature, everything around us. So.
I am jealous, I have to say, that you living in California, you guys have like farmers markets 3 seasons of the year. We have farmers markets for like 3, maybe 4 months a year, and then it's done.
To California.
You know, right? So you finally made the leap to make this your full-time career. I mean, I'm sure your family while you were off was enjoying like the fruits of your labor to say, like enjoying the taste testing part of it. But like when you finally decided to make this your career, was your family supportive of this, or were they still thinking that like it's a phase until, you started getting real traction with it?
um, they continue thinking that it was a still phase until I did Top Chef. So when I got auditioned for Top Chef, then everyone thought now she's serious. So it was in 2020. I was basically on my laptop working. I get a message, DM on Instagram from a producer. During COVID, remember, we would all do Zoom classes. So I used to teach
Mhm.
Zoom cooking classes through ClassPass. And I guess one of the producers took my class on Zoom.
Oh,
Uh, I don't know how he discovered me, but that's what it led me to believe, is that I saw your cooking class, and I thought it would be cool for you to be on this cooking show. Would you be interested? I didn't know at that point when I was talking to him what cooking show he was referring to. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do a cooking show, COVID. We're all sitting at home. And I had no idea. When I got the link and I clicked on the link and it said Top Chef audition, my jaw literally dropped. Because like when I came to this country, I loved watching cooking shows, and Top Chef was one of my favorite shows ever. Like I would follow every single Top Chef on social, watch their shows on Food Network or Bravo. And I'm like, this is going to be a dream come true if it actually happens. Like I had really very, very little hopes at that time we'll even go through this whole process, audition process. Like, I'm not professional chef. And they're like, well, this is what we're trying to do. This specific Top Chef episode will be for chefs who are not professional restaurant chefs, but chefs who are like private chefs who cook at home for fun. They're like amateurs, basically, right? And and I said, okay, what the heck, I'm gonna apply and do it. I applied, and from 2,700 people who applied
Oh,
for the
wow.
show, only 24 were chosen, and I was one of them. We went through five rounds of first initial interviews, and then another 5 rounds of final interviews, and then it was like interviews after interviews. Um, and then they flew us out to Portland, where the show was filmed. And I have to tell you, it was one of the best experiences of my life. I still get teared up when I talk about it.
Aw.
Being on stage, being on the show with people who I always looked up to growing up, um, it was just the most magical experience ever. People ask me, would you do it again? I'm like, yeah, 100 times. I would do this 100 times again. Um, my perception of reality shows was so different prior to doing Top Chef. I used to think, oh, it's all fake, like it's all set up. No, it's actually happening. Everything's real.
The timer is real.
Timing is real. Like you have no time. You're like, they give you 45 minutes to finish your dish, and it has to be the most perfect dish to impress the judges. There is no pausing. There is no stopping. It's like cooking in this, I don't know. I felt like I was in the sauna while I was running around and cooking. I was sweating, and the lights are on you. Everyone is looking at you. People are telling you, it was so much pressure, but at the same time, it was exciting. It was just like the rush of blood I was getting at that time. I remember, I cannot compare it to any other excitement I've had ever in my
Oh,
life.
wow.
Um, this is why I always thought I would do it again. I would do it 100 times again. Yeah.
What did you learn from being on Top Chef?
What I learned being on Top Chef, I think that for me, the biggest lesson was that you could create a dish. If you could create a dish to impress the judges, you don't have to overthink. It has to come from your heart. Just do what you're comfortable with. I always used to think like, oh, what can I do to impress people? No, don't think too much about that. Don't overanalyze. I'm a very analytical person, being an analyst is my other profession. What I learned is you should never overanalyze. You should never overthink. Just go with the flow. Go with your heart. If there is a dish that you really love growing up and that's what you love eating, cook that dish. And that's exactly what I did. I always loved comforting dishes like polenta, the rice dishes, those comforting, cozy dishes. And when I pulled my knife and it was gluttony, I said, okay, gluttony is to me is something that's like rich, rich and it's comforting and just soothing and like something that you don't want to like stop eating. You want to keep eating. What would be that dish? And boom, my head's like, I always loved this coconut polenta I used to make with vegetables. I'm just going to dish. And boom, I created that dish, and that was the winning dish.
I believe I saw that clip online, and you made it with one of my favorite squashes. You made it with delicata squash, right?
Squash, yes. So traditionally, I usually make that dish with either mushrooms or with eggplant. And sure enough, they did not have that in the pantry.
Oh, wow.
The way how I think they like to sabotage you a bit during the show. Right before the show, they do interviews. They ask you, like, what is your favorite ingredient? What do you like to cook with the most? And I love cooking with mushrooms. I love cooking with eggplant. And of course, I expressed that during the interview. And when the show started, when I started running in the kitchen looking for my ingredients, all my favorite ingredients were missing. So I had to just grab whatever I could at that point.
They're also like when you're vegan or vegetarian, they're great like meat substitute type ingredients, right? So they're stuff you lean on heavily.
Tofu, chickpeas, I tend to stay away from processed meat substitutes.
Mhm.
Um, I hardly ever use them in my cooking. I try to focus mostly on whole foods plant-based. So you see a lot of mushrooms in my food. You see a lot of chickpeas and lentils. When I make my burgers, I make my homemade burgers using lentils and quinoa and mushrooms, all the whole foods plant-based ingredients. And people ask me like, "Oh, do you use any meat substitutes?" And, well, sometimes I have clients who would like to have Impossible meat or Beyond Meat. Yeah, I do. I still cook with them. But for myself personally, for my family, when I'm cooking, we stick to just whole foods plant based.
Yeah, I'm a gluten free because I have to be, but some of those impossible meats and things actually aren't gluten free, which I don't think people actually know.
Yes, they're not.
So if you have a gluten issue, it might be something you guys want to make sure you look into before you consider eating it.
Yeah, read ingredients. I always say that to my clients as well. Always read the ingredients. And if it has too many ingredients, it's not good for you.
And if it sounds like a chemical, you should not be eating it.
You shouldn't be eating it. Exactly.
That is what I tell people all the time. I'm like, if it sounds like a chemical on the back of a package, unless it's some fruit or vegetable you just can't pronounce, do not eat it.
Exactly.
Not good for you.
Yeah, that's my advice always too. If there is something that you hear and it doesn't look familiar, doesn't sound familiar, don't buy it. Don't
Yeah.
eat it.
I mean, people are getting creative these days. Now, being on Top Chef, you had all these great experiences, everything. And you like, did you, I mean, you weren't just on Top Chef, you won. Like, that's the amazing part. You were on a show that you loved and you won. Like, what did that feel like? Did it sink in? Did it take time? How
It
did your
took
life
so much
change
time.
after?
It was surreal. When they announced I was the winner, like I was on the floor, like I was crying. They didn't show that part, but like I remember like sitting on the floor and like literally sobbing because I was so shocked that I won, and then my chef Tubes, who's a top chef, he's like, why are you crying? Like you did great. And I'm like, I know, but this like emotions are like running through me right now. I'm standing here in front of Gail Simmons, and all these incredible chefs who I admired my whole life. And this seems so surreal. And it's like, I get it.
The out of body experience. But like,
Out of body experience, yes.
how did things change? Like you won, you came home to your family, and like now you have all these opportunities in front of you. Like, what was the most surprising thing that happened next?
Most surprising thing that happened, I guess, I couldn't announce that I was the winner until the show was aired, which was the following year in 2021. Even my
Wait a
family,
whole year.
the whole year, exactly. For the whole year, I couldn't
Oh.
make it announced. Nobody knew. Like when I came home, my mouth was shut. People were asking me, like, so what happened? Did you win? Did you win? I'm like, I don't know. We'll find out. So I kept this whole thing really secretive. Like even my kids didn't know. And of course they're like, oh wait, no, mom, you won. And like when I was planning my viewing party, my son was like, I know you're doing a viewing party because you probably won. You wouldn't do a viewing party if you didn't win. And I'm like, you'll find out. You'll find out. Um, I definitely got more brands coming to me after winning Top Chef. I became a little bit more brave in my experiments cooking and also cooking for other people. I started doing more pop-up dinners after that. That was also surprising. I always used to cook for a very small amount of people in the past before Top Chef because I was just not comfortable presenting my food to so many people. And after Top Chef, I became a bit more braver, I guess. And I started cooking for 20 plus people, doing 5 course, 7 course tasting menus. So that was one of the things that I learned about myself, that I could do anything. If I did Top Chef, I could do anything. The
That's
definitely
like
gave
a
me a boost of confidence.
boost of like all the confidence and it like reassured your career path, right?
It definitely did. Yeah, it gave me a validation that I was on the right path.
That must feel so good and like a big sign from the universe that said, I did listen. I heard you screaming at my body and my mind.
It was indeed. Yeah, it was definitely a big sign from the universe.
Now, I was really fascinated because, I mean, obviously I said I follow your account, but you had posted a trip. You went back to Uzbekistan for, was it a family event or something like that?
It wasn't. So back in June, my sister texted me. She said, I'm thinking about going back home, back to Uzbekistan. She's been there a few times. That's a really great.
Mhm.
I've never been. It's been 26 years, right? And she's like, you should go. And I'm like, I don't know. Do I want to go? And she's like, you should definitely go. Let's go together. We'll be girls trip. And I'm working on a book right now. And the book will be more of a food memoir than just the recipe book. I'll talk
Okay.
about, my story as an immigrant coming to the United States, as a woman in her late 30s, early 40s, changing a career and finding her new path, right? And a lot of the influences that I had growing up were from cooking with my grandmother, cooking with my aunties, cooking with
Mhm.
all my family growing up in Uzbekistan. It had a huge impact in the way how I was raised around food. My love for food it all came from cooking with my family, right? So I wanted to really go back and revisit all of that, almost like finding myself again. You know,
Mhm.
um, people were asking me like, how do you feel right before my flight? My friends were like, how do you feel about going back? It's been 26 years, so have not been back 26 years. First time ever going back to my country after immigrating to the United States. I was so anxious, you have no idea. Because even people from my country who know me here in the United States, they tell me that I talk like a foreigner, I walk like a foreigner, I act like a foreigner. You don't even like act like a person from Uzbekistan. Like people usually say, like, you don't sound like a person from Uzbekistan. Well, obviously, I've lived here most of my life. Of course, I'm not
Mhm.
going to sound like a person from Uzbekistan. Yes, I still cook Uzbek dishes. Yes, I still follow Uzbek traditions. I wear my Uzbek outfits when I'm going to traditional um, festivals and weddings and such. But I really consider myself an American after living here for so many years. Right. So it was a nerve wracking going back. I wasn't sure what kind of reaction I would get from my relatives. I still keep in touch with them on Facebook, so I see them, and we chat here and there during holidays, Christmas, New Year's, and other holidays. But like, I don't stay in touch with them regularly. So it was a most profounding experience ever being back home after 26 years, experiencing the culture again, experiencing the food. I've had so many challenges with food though when I was there because I'm vegan and everything has meat. And every time I would tell people, I don't eat meat, they would look at me like I was somebody from like an alien, like from a different planet. Because
Is vegan like even an option there?
no, everything, even it's have meat in them. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Like they make this Caesar salad, very similar to Caesar salad, with like lots of lettuce, and they add chicken to it. Or they make this tomato salad that they add beef to it. And I'm like, why do you beef salad? Like this salad is good by itself without any beef. But the perception of people, like when you don't eat meat, they think you're sick. And that's why you don't eat meat. Like you have some sort of a health. So every time I would say like I don't eat meat, be like, what do you mean you don't eat? You're sick? And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not sick. I actually healed myself because I don't eat meat anymore. Um, and yeah, and they would be like, oh, I'm so sorry you don't eat meat. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm sorry you eat meat.
Like they don't understand it's a choice. It reminds me of that scene from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. My
Exactly.
mom was watching it the other night and
Exactly what
she's
it
like,
is.
he's a vegetarian. It's okay. I make lamb.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like that's like the equivalent of not eating meat.
That's it. That how was my auntie. When I said I'm vegan, I don't eat meat. She's like, "Oh, I'll make you fish," and I'm like, "No,
No, no, not the same thing.
like, what do you mean you don't eat fish? Like, fish is not animal." And I'm like, "It's animal."
I like confuse my grandmother so much, like because I can't eat certain stuff. So she's like, I need a list of what to buy at the grocery store. She's like, I don't understand when you come to visit. So I end up having to cook for myself because like just the idea of feeding me like freaks her out. I mean, to be fair, she's 90 and she's trying to understand. So I give her credit for that, but it's like the idea of it just stresses her out. I'm like, it's okay. I'll take care of it.
No, that's exactly how it was. People were confused. They weren't sure what to cook for me. And I remember my aunties asking me like, "How am I going to cook for you? How am I going to make this dish for you without me?" And I'm like, "Auntie, like you don't have to add any meat. Just cook the way you cook. Just skip the meat part. That's it." She was like, "But is it going to taste good?" I'm like, "Yes, it is going to taste good. Trust me, vegetables taste good."
Now, did you have any memories from like being there, like stuff you remembered from when you were younger that you might not have? Because I know sometimes, we don't always remember clearly from when we were little. Was there
Right.
stuff that was like, oh my God, I remember this from when I was little, or from I remember eating this dish when we were lived here that, it's not something you guys make while you've been here in the States.
One of the memories kind of brought a lot of um, one of the things I did that brought a lot of memories back
You
was
don't have to share if it's too much for you.
no, no, not at all, not at all. So my grandmother and I, we used to go to a Sunday market to buy our ingredients for Sunday dinner. And so I went to this market with my uncle, and as I was walking through the aisles of, where they sell the ingredients of the vegetables of the farmers, those memories came back to me. And I'm like, I remember this, doing this with my grandmother, picking fruits from this place, buying nuts from this place, picking up our spices from this store. And all those memories came back, and I was so emotional going through that entire moment shopping with my uncle. And he looked at me and he said, "You remember, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, clearly."
So nice. You guys made a lot of traditional stuff you posted about. I saw some breads and
Yes.
it looked like some sort of pasta noodles or something you're making, which I
Yeah,
that
handful
was
noodles.
traditional.
Traditional handful noodles, which is very so. One of the things that I can never find here in the United States is traditional Uzbek handful noodles. So when you ask me, like, is there some dish that brought
Mhm.
memories back, right? I really wanted to make traditional handful noodles with my auntie, who is she's like a master chef when it comes to that. So she dedicated full day with me, and I recorded the entire process, how to make the traditional Uzbek handful noodles. Oh my
How
gosh!
long did it take?
Oh my gosh! It almost takes half a day. Like you make the dough, you rest the dough, then you have to pull the dough by hand. Um, yeah, I think we started at 10 o'clock, and by the time we ate, it was 3 o'clock.
Oh wow.
Just like with pasta making, Italian pasta making, it's
It
always
does. It takes a while if you, depending on what kind of dough you make. Yeah.
exactly. It's kind of similar process, but I remember making that dish, sitting down and eating it. I started crying. It was just the taste. I mean, you cannot find anything like it.
Did you try anything on your trip that you've never had before?
I don't believe so. Um, I think most of the things I had during my trip, things were already familiar, um, but modified. They weren't um, with protein anymore. They were all vegan versions of everything I've had before,
You
which
said, go ahead. Sorry.
is like, to me, that was like also a new experience. All of a sudden, I'm trying the traditional rice that we make, but without the meat. I'm trying the noodles without the meat. Um, People were asking me, does it taste the same as with meat? Does not, but still, it has all those flavors that I loved growing up. So
How did your sister feel about the trip since is she a vegan too, or is she now?
no, no, she eats everything. She was concerned for me, I remember. when we were flying. She was asking me on the plane, like, what are you gonna do if you can't find anything to eat? And I'm like, well, I can always eat veggies. I can always make myself a salad. I can always eat fruits. And we arrived at a moment where there was a harvest moment. So we had abundance of fruits and vegetables available at the markets. Month of August and September is one of the best months to go to Uzbekistan because it just everything is there. Grapes and apples and berries, and you find just the most abundance of fruits and vegetables during that season.
It's so nice that you were able to do that. And I love to hear that you're writing a book. Do you know when you'll eventually finish it, or is that something you're not sure about yet?
Like writing a book is like giving a birth to a child.
Oh, I haven't done that yet, so I'm not quite sure yet.
It's even worse than that. So hopefully soon. I'm a perfectionist, I'm trying to I'm I'm gonna make this book one of the best books ever. And people are not familiar with Uzbek culture, so it's going to be really difficult to relate. Like people are familiar with Korean food and Korean culture. People are familiar with Chinese food and Chinese culture, right? Or Middle Eastern food and Middle Eastern culture, but nobody knows what Uzbek food is. So,
No, I have to say I've been learning a lot from you when you started posting more traditional recipes because I can't say that I know a lot about it.
and I think my job would be to really make Uzbek food, Uzbek culture accessible. So people are curious. They want to know what is Uzbek culture? How this woman came to this country and created this, right? It will be also educational, where people will learn about my culture, my traditions, the food. If you look at Uzbek cuisine 100 years back,
Mhm.
meat was only used in a special occasion. Meat was a sign of prosperity,
Okay.
of wealth. So people who were very wealthy, they would cook with meat once a week. But most of the time, a lot of the dishes that I grew up with, they were very veg forward. And I think people started adding meat as people became more uh, wealthy. And they had more access to animal protein, right? And I think that's also very relatable to other cultures. If you look at the Italian culture, right? I mean, there are a lot of pastas, but not all pastas have meat or fish.
No.
Mostly they're vegetarian, right?
It all depends on what region of Italy you're in. Actually, people don't understand that depending on the region, they may use butter over olive oil, or like the coastal regions are more heavily on fish than they are meat. Certain northern co do more meat. Like it all depends on what's available in that region. They stick to the regional, seasonal, what's available. They don't venture further from like they'll never track anything that's gone like halfway around the world like we do here in the US.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same thing in my part of the world, But I was doing a lot of research while I was there, and that's what I learned. That 100 years back, people didn't use a lot of meat.
Hmm.
It was very veg forward. But then, as time went on, when people became wealthier, had more access to animal protein, they started adding lamb and chicken and fish to those traditional recipes. And now it's what it is now, shows like this is Uzbek food, which is very meat heavy, and it wasn't like that before.
I love that, and I love learning about new cultures. Every year I try to learn about a different cuisine, like more about it. I mean, then I try to put my own spin on it. But I learned, like you, with my MS and my mast cell, I learned through food how to be healthy. And part of the reason I love your account is because I'm essentially a vegan, gluten-free vegan who occasionally has to eat fish because my body wants some sort of protein. But I love being able to find somebody else that can think about food the way I do.
Just surrounding yourself with the like-minded people, right?
Yes, and I mean, I love hearing that you healed yourself through food too. And people just don't realize that I tell people that healthy starts from the inside out.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
why you look so lovely at your age, because you started from the inside out.
That's it. Yeah. Food is medicine, as we say, right? And people
Right.
always forget the that connection between your gut and your brain. If your gut is unhealthy, you're not going to be happy mentally either. So you gotta make your gut healthy if you want to feel happy.
Very true. I could talk to you all day about food, and I'm sure you and I could probably talk about food in all kinds of different regional cuisine, everything all day. But our time is coming to an end, and I would
Lovely, Ashley. Thank you.
love to hear your final thoughts before we say goodbye. You're allowed to say, we let our guests say whatever they want, whatever message they want to share with the viewers right before we let them go.
Final thoughts. Don't be scared of experimenting in the kitchen with spices and your ingredients. If you go to the farmer's market and you find a vegetable that you never cooked with before, buy it. Take it home. Make something delicious. There are so many resources out there now on YouTube, on Instagram, where you can find amazing recipes using seasonal ingredients or ingredients you never used before. So I always tell people, don't be afraid of experimenting in the kitchen. If you saw something and you want to make it, do it. And that's how I started. I started learning a little bit of this cuisine and that cuisine, experimenting with vegan food. And now I feel like this is the best thing I've done for myself.
I love that. And I love the message you give. Make sure you guys go to her account, NaturallyZuzu. I'll have it across the bottom for you guys to check out, and it'll be in the show description. I want you guys to tune in next week. We have some amazing guests this month. Thank you, Zuliya, so much for joining.
Having me, Ashley. And you guys, if you have any questions about plant-based diet, about any ingredients incorporating into your life that you've never did before, my DMs are always open. I love educating people. I love helping them. So please never hesitate. So, Ashley, thank you so much.